I kind of inherited, so to speak, a son when I married my wife in 1997. It was just one of those things where it was difficult, right? I mean, from the standpoint of his dad was never really involved in the picture at all, so I didn't want to just step in and kind of be that dad, but at the same token, just kind of recognizing that he could use some male influence and some male guidance, albeit mine was probably a little more directive than guiding, if you will. It was interesting to try to navigate that, as we went through things because here I am, the stranger, kind of coming into the picture, and he's like, "Who are you?" And then it just takes a while to build up rapport, and that was tricky, and I will say that I learned a lot from that. Unfortunately, on his dime, I think that's carried over to the other two.
What's doing, everybody? Welcome to First Class Fatherhood. I'm Alec Lace, and before I hit you with today's interview, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the link in the description so you can listen to all of the interviews I've done with so many tremendous dads, including Dana White, Deion Sanders, Tony Hawk, and so many others. Now let's get going with today's interview. Joining me now, First Class Father Steve Olsher. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, let's kick it off like this here. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
Well, technically three. Two are mine, and one is a stepchild since he was 10.
Wow, very cool. What kind of sports activities are they all into?
The older one, the one that I've had since he was 10, not too much really. Never really grabbed, more the creative type art, that kind of stuff. I mean, really, really creative, an incredible painter, and I mean, just mad creative talent. So not really on the sports side. My older son of the two that are whatever, natural born children, I don't know, whatever you call these.
Biological.
They're all kids to me. So they're all my kids. Isaiah, who's the middle one, then he's 17. He's been into baseball. He's been into football, and he's been doing jujitsu with me on and off for a number of years. And then my youngest, who is Xavier, he's kind of gone through a number of different things: flag football, regular football, and now really, really into basketball.
Very cool, Steve. If you could, please just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
So just in the 30-second nutshell here, 30-year entrepreneur. I've done a number of different things, from opening up my own nightclub when I was 19 to getting involved in the catalog world really early, and then launching a store on CompuServe's electronic mall in 1993. So that's how long I go back online. And that company became liquor.com, like what you drink. And eventually sold that to Barry Dillard's IEC, did about $50-odd million in real estate development over the years. And I've been podcasting and coaching and writing and speaking since about 2009. And now I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Podcast Magazine. And we also run ClubPod on Clubhouse.
Yeah, you're very successful, very busy, Steve. Along this journey that you've had here, then take us back to the beginning of your fatherhood journey. About how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I kind of inherited, so to speak, a son when I married my wife in 1997. So what was I, 38? No, I can't even do the math anymore. I don't even know how I was. Whatever I was, 20, 27, 26, 26, I think. 26, whatever it was. Anyway, so yeah, man, it was just one of those things where it was difficult, right? I mean, from the standpoint of his dad was never really involved in the picture at all. So I didn't want to just step in and kind of be that dad, but at the same token, just kind of recognizing that he could use some male influence and some male guidance, albeit mine was probably a little more directive than guiding, if you will. It was interesting to try to navigate that, as we went through things, because here I am, the stranger, kind of coming into the picture, and he's like, "Who are you?" And then it just takes a while to build up rapport, and that was tricky. And I will say that I learned a lot from that. Unfortunately, on his dime, I think that's carried over to the other two.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I bring on a lot of dads that have stepchildren, that are stepdads, dads that have adopted children, and I think it's incredible because I focus a lot here on the fatherless crisis, where we got so many kids in our country growing up without a father or a father figure in their life, and it's really having a devastating result on our society. So it's important for these kids to have father figures like yourself there as they grow up. And what would you say, Steve, were the top values that you've always hoped to instill in your kids as they grow up?
Man, that's a great question. Um, God, I see, and I always admire those who like have these sort of things written down, and they have like, the vision board for their family, and they've got like all these, goals, and we're gonna do this and that. Like for me, I just want them to be decent fucking human beings. It's like just treat people well, don't be an asshole, and at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to dig a ditch because you got to make a dollar, and other times you're going to be just doing something that doesn't feel like work. So be ready to do it all and do all that it takes to get it done.
Yeah, very cool, Steve. I love that. And what would you say about as far as discipline goes? What type of disciplinarian are you as a dad, and is that different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
Yeah, I'm less and less of a disciplinarian as I get older, for sure. I think I just have less energy to fight, so more guiding as things go along here. But I will say that my triggers, for whatever reason, are definitely the messy house and just things everywhere and not putting away your dishes and those sort of things. So in that regard, I think that's probably where I'm more of a disciplinarian than I probably should be in any sort of real healthy kind of manner. But I don't know. Maybe it's like an OCD thing. I know we had roaches when I was growing up, and just the idea of having roaches in the house and mice and all that crap. Like I mean, you open a drawer and 20 roaches scatter, man. That'll scar you for a lifetime.
Yeah, been there myself, Steve. Unfortunately, I want to take it into Podcast Magazine. I love the concept of Podcast Magazine. I know, obviously, this month we're celebrating fathers. You've had Adam Carolla and Howie Mandel on the cover of your two Father's Day. I've had both of them on the podcast here. Great dads, awesome interviews. So, take us to the beginning here. What was the genesis of you starting up the Podcast Magazine, and where is it headed, and what's been the feedback?
Yeah, man, it's interesting, right? Because I was simply sitting there one day at a conference, and I couldn't believe that there wasn't sort of like the Rolling Stone, if you will, for the world of podcasts, or Vanity Fair or Sports Illustrated. It's just something that really went deeper into the lives of the people whose shows we listen to, right? And get to know them from a much deeper perspective than perhaps what you'd pick up just generally on the show. So as I sat there and I started looking around and started trying to figure out, like, does this make sense to do? It became well, I'll just say it became apparent pretty quickly that there was an opportunity there. And I just didn't know if I should have been the one or needed to be the one to bring that to fruition. But like most things that I do, oftentimes it's just because I don't want someone else to do it. And then I'm going to look back and go, well, I had that idea and I didn't do it. Right. So for me, it was just simply a matter of like, I just love podcasting. I love what the industry does for people. I love how we're able to share our mission and our messages with people from across the globe. And I just didn't feel like the industry itself was being as legitimized as it could be. I don't think it was as well represented as it could be. And so we really wanted to create a first class publication that really gave people the opportunity to not only go deeper into the lives of people that they know and hear, but really introduce them also to so many shows that they haven't heard of and really should be listening to. And so that was really part of our goal out of the gate, was just let's see what we can do to level the playing field here.
Yeah, and I love it. I'm a subscriber myself. I'm going to put the link in the description of this podcast episode. So my listeners, I'd encourage them to tap the link, get over there and subscribe to the podcast magazine. Obviously now too, ClubPod, you guys have just exploded on Clubhouse here. Clubhouse became popular at the end of last year, I believe. How did you get introduced to this? What was your first hearing of Clubhouse, and how did you build such a massive following so quickly over there?
Yeah, it was just one of those things, man, where came across my desk and somebody was like, hey, you should probably check this out. Seems up your alley. I was like, okay, let me dig in a little bit, and we got involved in early December of 2020. I think I finally jumped on the app around the second week of December, and then about 10 days later, just kind of seeing the writing on the wall and feeling like this is probably going to go in the direction of individual clubs, and that seemed to be where a lot of the focus was. I was like, let me see what I can do to hang my hat here, really in the world of podcasting. Let me see if I can create a club that's going to be of interest to people who love podcasts, people who are podcasters, people who just want to be a part of podcast culture, or maybe involved in the industry of podcasting. And so I was like, let me start a club here. And honestly, man, it was just kind of a snowball effect of we used what was going on with Podcast Magazine, and then we shared with others what we were doing, and then they started sharing with their friends what we were doing, and before we knew it, we actually had 60 ClubPod leaders signed on to help lead rooms on a consistent basis. And I think we just crossed 61,000 members and followers in the club. And we did that in roughly 5.5 months.
It's incredible, Steve. Yeah, I've been in quite a few of the ClubPod rooms. I'm looking forward to joining the ClubPod membership there myself. It's really impressive what you've done. I think there's so much valuable information. What you've done is created so many opportunities for so many people to create their own rooms, invite their friends in. So, I mean, props to you for giving these opportunities. There's so many people out there that are really benefiting from what you've created. And I get this a lot, like, people that are parents that want to start their own podcast. They say they don't have the time to do it. It's one of the main questions they say is they don't have the time to start a podcast. What kind of advice do you have for the dad out there in particular who's looking to start a podcast of his own but is afraid to take that first step?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, like anything else, you just have to figure out why you want to do it, if it fits into your life, how does it complement what you're doing, and how important is it to really hear your own voice and share your mission and your message. And then if it seems to be a whole bunch of yeses, like you just can check all those boxes and having a podcast makes sense, the reality is it just doesn't take that much work today versus what it was just a few short years ago. So for me, if the desire is there, you don't let the technology get in the way of the mission, because there's a million podcast producers and people out there who they can do this stuff as good as it needs to be. Not saying it's going to be pro level, but it's good enough for when you just get started. If you don't want to do any of the tech stuff, and it's just dollars, it's very minimal.
Yeah, good stuff. And then let me bring it back into you as a dad here, Steve, for a minute. I think you said your oldest was 17. Is that what you said?
Well, my biological oldest is 17. My stepson is now 35.
Okay, so I was going to try to get in on this because my oldest is 15 and he's just about to hit these areas now with peer pressure, introduction to drugs, alcohol, driving, dating. How did you kind of handle it now, or how are you handling it? I know you've been there with your older one, but as they start to come into this, what kind of advice do you give them when they're hitting all these stages in their life? Driving, dating, introduction to drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. I think I'm going to come across here as a huge liberal in that. I mean, I'm just not one of those people that believes that if you try to hold that, that handful of water and you squeeze it, I mean, it's just like it's all just going to go through your hand anyway, right? So no matter how hard you squeeze, it's not going to have the effect and impact that you want, right? So we just have open discussions about it. We talk about. Without being too specific here, I mean, I've done plenty of drugs. I've shared that with them. They know I do drugs. I ran liquor.com, so they know I drink. I don't really drink much now, but I'll have the occasional beer or whatever. So there's no hiding the fact that we do these things. We talk about these things. What I would say, of course, is you just got to be smart, and we've talked about how to be smart about it. And I don't expect him not to do it. I mean, obviously now with marijuana and everything else being as recreational as it is, I know he gets high, and we've had the conversations about it. Just don't drive when you're high. Don't drive when you're drunk. Just call us. We'll come and we'll get you. And then even, as far as the girls are concerned, because both of our youngest are boys, and my oldest is a boy as well. It's just simply a matter of, look, you got to make sure that you don't do anything with anyone while they're under the influence. Just dangerous territory, right? So you got to make sure that you're just not taking advantage of anybody, and be really aware of their state, and of course be aware of yours.
Yeah, good stuff, Steve. Yeah, I'm a recovering alcoholic and an addict myself too. So it's one of the things that I have concern about as they're coming in. Plus, I drive Uber on the weekends. Not anymore, but I was doing it for quite a long time, and it's really a nightmare on Friday, Saturday nights when I go to pick up these kids. The scene that I'm seeing there. So it's definitely, I think that's an improvement that we have this
Yeah.
Uber and Lyft. I think it's saved so many lives over the years here.
Yeah, I'm sure if they've tried to measure that, it would be impossible, but Lord knows there's some sort of metric there that should be measured.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm curious to get your opinion, Steve. I know, like, we see kids really take over these social media apps. We've seen them dominate TikTok and Instagram. And is podcasting, is there a space in podcasting for kids, for young kids to start there? If they have any dads out there that have kids that are interested in starting a podcast of their own, is the market there for kids to start their own podcasts?
Yeah, actually, one of our new media summit alumnus as an icon of influence. We did an event for years called the New Media Summit, where we would give aspiring podcast guests the opportunity to take center stage and pitch top podcasters on who they are and what they do, and they would literally get booked on the spot. So we did that for a number of years, and I think at 3 of our events, we had a young lady. Her name is Neva Lee Rekla. Let's get that tongue twister. Neva Lee Rekla. And I think what she did when she first took the stage as an icon of influence at the first New Media Summit, I think she was 8. And so, yeah, she's got a fun show, and I don't think there's any show that's off limits. I mean, in the world of podcasting, that's really the most beautiful thing about it, right? So no matter how young they are, if they have an interest in talking about a particular subject, whether it's Pokemon cards or their favorite sport or whatever it is, or they just want to sit down with influential people and ask them questions. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge opportunity there. And the reality is it's not easy. There's grown people who have been doing podcasts for years that don't have the numbers. So I mean, just do it because they really love doing it, as opposed to looking at it from the standpoint of, this is kind of a get rich quick opportunity.
Yeah, very well said. I think a lot of people do have that misconception going into it, that that's what it is. So, all right, what's up next for you? Obviously, you're busy with ClubPod, with Podcast Magazine. What kind of goals or plans do you have here for yourself for the future, Steve?
Well, I'm heading into a little bit of the sort of the pasture period, so to speak. I'm gonna really slow things down, get much clearer on what it is that I want to be doing. I've got my eyes on a pretty big opportunity that really reinvents the world of real estate. But it's a big endeavor, and I'm just not sure if I want to bite that off at this moment. Although I might. I mean, we'll see. But at the very least, what I'm going to be doing here over the next 60, 90, 120 days is really just taking the time to put on the schedule all the things that I really want to be doing, whether that's time with the family, time with the kids, time for myself, etc. And any time that's left over, I'll pop in and do a few things here and there with the job. But and when I say job, I just mean the company, right? So we'll see, man. But for me, it's really all about scheduling joy first, as my friend Tiamo De Vittori talks about, and so I'm going to schedule that joy first, and then see what else there is time for.
Yeah, great stuff, Stephen. The last thing I want to hit you with here, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
Yeah, I mean, I would say as far as the new dad or the about-to-be father, you've heard it probably a million times, but it is true that things go by really, really quickly. And ultimately, the thing that I have a little bit of regret about, if I'm going to use that word, is if you think about it in terms of a selfish versus selfless type of scale, and you go from 0 to 10 in terms of 0 being selfish and 10 being selfless, you got to be as close to an 8 or 9 as you can on the selfish, selfless scale with your kids, and that means you're going to give up a lot of things that you might normally want to have going on, but at the end of the day, you want to create a relationship that lasts a lifetime, and the little bit of selflessness now that you've got to tap into should pay dividends for their entire lives.
Yeah, very well said, Steve. I love the message. This has been a lot of fun for me. I got to say, Steve Olsher, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Appreciate it, brother.